You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.
For our next session, we turn again to discussions about the ever-changing options marketplace and how the industry is providing meaningful education to our varied audiences. We're pleased to have Lori Schock, Director of the Office of Investor Education and Advocacy for the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, as our moderator. Lori?
Thank you so much. And thank you for those who are joining us. Good afternoon to some and good morning to others. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Coming from the SEC, I have to start with my disclaimer that the views I express here today are mine and mine alone and don't necessarily represent those of the Commission or the staff of the Commission. But with that out of the way, let's go ahead and introduce our panel. I wanted each panelist to go ahead and just do a brief introduction of the work that you do on a day-to-day basis and what's your background here with investor education. Maybe we should start with Jamal and what he does with Tasty Trades.
Okay, great. Thanks for having me, OCC. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. My name is Jamal Chandler, as Lori said, and I work with Tasty Trade. I am somewhat of a new member to Tasty Trade. Tasty Trade is a financial news network, and really we just provide an opportunity for those who are new to trading or those who've been in trading for a while with a different platform and the opportunity to express different trading views that we've seen. There's, hundreds of years of market experience on the Tasty Trade staff. And so we just try to execute this vision of, those who want to be independent investors and take an active participant role in their trading, everyday trading. So.
Well, great. Thanks. Greg, can you tell us a little bit with your work with Fidelity and what you're doing with investors?
Lori, as Jamal said, thanks to OCC for having us here, OIC for having us, today. I'm Greg Stevens. I work for Fidelity Investments. I'm part of the investment experience for options. We, help drive the research analysis and trading aspects of the options experience on the platforms, as well as investor education. So we're always looking for opportunities to improve, the platform, to engage with, our option traders and make the experience better overall.
Fabulous. Let me tell you a little bit about the work that my office does at the Securities and Exchange Commission. So as the director of the Office of Investor Education and Advocacy, we're responsible for the investor education programs of the Commission. We also develop the content for retail investors through either investor alerts and bulletins or the work and information we put out on investor.gov, which is our retail-facing website. We reach millions of retail investors on an annual basis through those, as well as through our social media accounts that OIEA runs. Additionally, we have a public service campaign that we've done on an annual basis now for the past 5 years, where we're trying to raise awareness of the tools and resources that are available on investor.gov, as well as if people have a question or complaint, that they can file that directly with my office. And that's the third prong of the work that my office does, is the Office of Investor Assistance, where we handle investor complaints and questions. Generally on an annual basis, it's around 20,000 questions and complaints. But this year was quite unique, I have to say. The end of January, early February, we ended up with over 60,000 investor complaints and questions that came in. This was during the Wall Street, Reddit, GameStop, and other trading issues that were taking place. And, from my perspective, we ended up with 3 years worth of work. But then it also brought to light, some challenges that we're seeing in the markets and in the retail space. And, I wanted to open this up to the other panelists to see sort of what they saw from and what they're seeing from their, unique perspectives. So, Jamal, let's start with you. How's this impacted you? How's 2021 treating you so far this year?
Well, to sort of echo what you said, it's been busy. And as you would imagine, we just came through an extraordinary event that on top of, I think it's a perfect storm. We had commissions lowered to essentially zero. We had, of course, the pandemic. We had people at home, and people were really interested in what's going on in the market. And, the accessibility is at a level that it's never been before. The apps are available for everybody at any given time. And just on a pop culture level, things this idea of social media and how it plays into trading, it's a huge part of it. Whether it's Twitter, whether it's Facebook, or whether it's, a newer generation of people via TikTok or Snapchat or something like that. Those are areas that, we've seen people pay attention to the market more than ever before. And again, like I said, because of the pop culture issue, when you see a situation where Saturday Night Live has skits involving NFTs, non-fungible tokens, or, something related to GameStop, that lets you know that it's in the fabric of our culture. So it's hard for people not to pay attention. And I think it's a good thing because, it gets to the essence of what we're really talking about, financial literacy. People are taking a more active role in wanting to pay attention to their finances.
Greg, how about you? What are you seeing?
Yeah, I think the same as Jamal's saying. We've seen tremendous engagement this year, not only from new entrants to the market, but just the overall population. with the pandemic as our background and, social media taking a much bigger part in what, in what our investors are doing. It's been quite incredible. With the engagement with our education, we've seen a 90% increase in attendance in our webinars. A 60% increase, actually a 370% increase in our coaching sessions, and it's just been incredible to see the amount of engagement. Not only with our educational platform, but with our associates, our branches. And, a lot of it's, you're coming with, as I was mentioning, the pandemic and everything else, that's been going on.
That's great. So it's a boom for business. My concern, and I think the concern of everyone on this panel, is also we want people to be educated, and we want people to know sort of, what they're investing in, the impacts of it, and, how it functions, if you will. So, glad to see more first-time investors than we've seen in the history of the United States. But also then making sure that we're there and educating them at the time and place where they're looking maybe for education. So I'm glad to hear about the uptick in the webinars as well as the coaching sessions. I think that's great because we do want people to sort of have that education that goes along with it. I have to say, I was at a recent Investor Ed event with new Marines, if you will. So they just finished basic training. So this is sort of a first-time job for them. And, trying to get them acclimated with a thrift savings plan, which is a federal 401k, if you will. And some of them, really, they are automatically invested in it. They didn't know it. They didn't even have their password for that account. But when I asked them what else they're trading in, it's like, oh, I trade in options. And it's like, oh, okay. Tell me about that. And it's the accessibility through apps and things. And again, just making sure that they have that investing knowledge sort of behind it. As far as sort of the newer investors that you're seeing, are there any demographics or other information that you're able to tell from the new investors that you're seeing on your different platforms? Jamal, you want to start off?
Oh, yeah, I'll go first. I don't have the direct answer to that. I'm still somewhat of a newer person at Tasty Trade, but just going off of the idea of my own friend group, my peer group, I can say 100% yes. The amount of questions that I received just on a personal note from different friends throughout this past year has been higher than ever before, even higher than I would say in 2008. So people were actively interested in learning more about not only just, trading, stock trading. What do I choose? How do I choose it? How do I buy it? Questions like that, to the idea of options. A little bit more sophisticated investors that, have been trading for some time started to ask more questions about options. And, I've only been in the field for 15 years, but in the 15 years, I've never had that many people ask me about options. So I think it just speaks to everything that's been going on. And certainly we've seen that at Tasty Trade. We have this situation where we're sort of direct to consumer as far as, the shows that we have on a daily basis. And people are asking those questions, those detailed questions about options, and we're happy to answer.
That's great. Hey, Greg, how about you? What are you seeing?
Yeah, I think from a firm perspective, we've definitely gotten younger. The new entrants coming into the market are definitely skewing a little younger than what our typical audience has been in the past. And I think, to your point about the apps, the accessibility of the information, the education, just access to markets, that wasn't there in 2000, 2008, as Jamal had mentioned. And to his point, I've never had so many questions from, my peer group. And I actually had my best friend from college, his son, who's 18, calling me up, and he had been trading a little, of Bitcoin, of all things. And he's like, what are these option things? Can you tell me a little bit about it? And so we spent 30 minutes on there, giving him an introductory education, and then, some resources for him to go do a little bit more. And that's been an ongoing thing for the past 3 months with him, trying to learn a little bit more, doing the right thing, not jumping into it first, but, getting some additional knowledge. But yeah, it's been great to see the engagement with them.
That's great. It's nice that he has such direct access to an expert. Let's have a conversation. So, when we talk about that, and we talk about, April is Financial Capability Month, so it's very timely to have this seminar during this time period. We are always challenged sort of with delivery and delivery methods of information. I talked about sort of the investor education or in-time education when someone's trying to make a decision. I know that we think about this a lot at the SEC and, try to be where people are. However, we still also have sort of the historical ways of putting out information, but just trying to change those delivery systems and be creative. Like, I don't think I'm ever going to be able to be on TikTok through the SEC, at least not in the current stage that it's in. But how do we reach those audiences? And tell me what you all are doing to reach those different groups and how you've changed your delivery over the years. Jamal, you want to kick us off?
Sure. With us, it starts with the visionary Tom Sosnoff at Tasty Trade. Honestly, he's the person who has this idea of, directly talking to those who are interested in being active investors. And so, on Tasty Trade Live every day, there's Tom Sosnoff and Tony Batista. They're the flagship show, and they're the ones who are talking to a lot of our customers day in and day out about options trading. And these are people who, traded on the options trading floor, which, as we know, is sort of, slowing down over the years. And they've, come to this situation in this new generation of a lot of trading on apps, of trading on sophisticated software. So, it starts there. You have shows like Liz and Jenny, of course, on Tasty Trade as well. But, one of the things that we try to do is interact with, not only those who've been trading for a while, but newer trading people, and whether it's options or futures. I mean, currently one of my early things that I'm doing is on a show called The Leap, which we're talking about somebody who, like myself, who's traded options for years. I've never traded futures, never traded a future in my personal account. And that's something that's new to me. And before I do it, I want to learn about it. And so I'm learning about it from two of our people, Pete Molmat and Frank Caberna, who were really good futures trading guys. So I think, that gets to the essence of it. It's okay not to know something. Ask questions and ask those who understand. So that's the way we try to do it.
And Greg, you mentioned, some of the webinars and coaching sessions that you have. What other ways are you trying to get information to people and have them, sort of self-educate, if you will?
Yeah, Lori. I mean, the way that we interact with customers, has changed significantly, over the years. I mean, I started in the industry in 1995, and it was all in person. You had to fly to Denver. You had to fly to Washington. You had to fly, to Houston, in order to talk to your clients on a one-on-one basis and educate them, because there was really no, the start of an internet and the start of this. So you really had to reach out to your customers to do that. And as you both have mentioned, I mean, it's changed significantly over the past, 25 years now, that we're engaging our customers where they're at, and, being able to reach out to them and really meet them, when and where they're at. So what I mean by that is, not only are we doing the webinars, but we're doing these coaching sessions. And, previously, when we were doing all the in-person sessions, it was 100 people. Now it's thousands of people, who can attend their webinars. It's, 50 to 100, in, all across the country, who are dialing in to this. But, there's not only that aspect of it, I think, but it's also, you mentioned trading. How do we get them the right information at the right time when they're placing a trade, so they're making an informed and educated decision? And, at our firm, we've started to, and have been doing, over the past years, integrating, specific data points, education within the process of them trading. So, if, they, are selecting a strategy on the trade ticket, there's information for, them to, what is this strategy? Let me go get a little bit more information if I'm not quite as clear on it. What is exercise? What is assignment? So we're working to integrate all of that really where they're at, so they don't have to go look for it, because a lot of times we're creatures of habit. We only go to one place at one time, and that's all we, to the education and when they need it, we're doing a little bit more with that. The second thing, I think, is you mentioned TikTok, and we've talked about Reddit and everything else here. We really have to reach out to customers, as well, where they're on those social platforms, making sure that we can provide them with, the right information, meaning that, they're getting, correct or valid information, that it's not something that is kind of right, but not 100%. So whatever the questions are, whether they are, about options, their retirement, their retirement funds, we need to be reaching out to them, there. And we've started a little bit of that, here at Fidelity.
Very good. Very good. A few years ago, my office launched an initial coin offering. It was howiecoins.com. And we did that in large part because of what Jamal mentioned earlier, that, it was so in the mainstream at the time, ICO investing, and it made the late night talk shows. So you knew it was out there. People were talking about it, dealing with it. And, our ICO, essentially, then if you click to buy, you would get a message saying, hey, look, this actually had some indicia of fraud. And that's not the same type of thing that we're talking about here when we're trying to educate people with options. This is a very legitimate way of investing. And so I appreciate the creativity that you're showing and trying to help educate investors. And at that time, I will be following up with you because, it's something that we need to do a better job of at the SEC and not become complacent in trying to be creative and reaching investors at that time as well. We've done some other programs where, Google AdWords, if they're searching on a certain topic, that maybe they'll get one of our investor bulletins. Just, hey, a little bit of investor education here at that point in time. And we also find, strategic partnerships to be a big part of this as well. For us, it's sort of hitting the trifecta, if you will, that if we have it's a joint investor alert or bulletin that we put out with the state securities regulators and with FINRA, the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority. We sort of consider that the trifecta, if you will. Can you talk about some of the strategic partnerships that you're involved with? And hi, Denise. Like to welcome you to the panel. Sorry that we had some technical difficulties there.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now. Thank you. Yes.
Sorry about that. One of the realities of being in the virtual world, some technology challenges, but happy to be with you all. Thank you.
Absolutely. So do you want to start off with strategic partnerships, or what would you like to do, Denise?
Sure, I would love to. Okay. So I'm representing, of course, OCC and OIC. And for those who may not be aware, OIC was established almost 30 years ago, and it's a service provided by OCC to educate the public about the benefits and risks of exchange-traded options. And that in itself is a strategic partnership. It is done in partnership with our participant exchanges, as well as our clearing firms. And we have, a number of different programs and services that we provide, and we couldn't do it without the collective partnerships across the industry. So we do a number of different seminars virtually. We do webinars, podcasts, videos, and it's really important that we've cultivated these relationships over the years, and we've been able to deliver on behalf of the industry. There's definitely a vested interest and a passion for delivering education to the public. And through these strategic partnerships that are, again, clearing members, exchange driven, we've also started to expand those a little more as well and started working more with our regulatory partners. Recently, we delivered created an article, a joint article with FINRA on assignment to help investors understand some of the challenges, some of the risks that they need to be aware of with assignment. And then one of the other outreach partnerships that we've been really focusing on, and I think I heard part of this session earlier, is with our university partners and really targeting that younger demographic and trying to reach investors or potential future investors earlier in the game. So we talk about financial literacy. We want to make sure that they're really understanding all of the different components of what can be a complex product, but when you break it down to their fundamentals and have a strong foundation, then we believe that we're best preparing those investors for the future.
Great. Hey, Greg, how about you? What's Fidelity looking at with strategic partnerships?
For us, strategic partnerships have been very important over the years. We've partnered with the exchanges, to come in and talk with not only with our customers but our associates. To ensure that they're up to date on new products, new offerings, give that options education. And it's, over the year, OIC has been a fantastic partner of ours as well. Just, bringing that, education, across the country, to our associates. And we're currently still, doing that. But not only do we do that, but we look at some influencers, as well, across the country. Folks who have been in the industry for a while, who have a different perspective on not only just the classroom version of what options are, this is a call, this is a put, but investing as well. So I think it's very important for us to not only look at just what kind of the textbook learning, of options is, but we've engaged with strategic partners to talk about the process of investing. How do you, look at, finding a stock? And then how do you determine what is the right option and the right expiration date, for you in order to take advantage of your forecast? So, for us, they have been tremendously important, across the years to provide different perspectives, but also just to provide the education for our clients. So, and they will continue to be. I think that we are an industry that definitely leverages those strategic partnerships very well, and I think that we'll continue to do that.
Very good, very good. And Jamal, how about you?
I'm still mesmerized how Denise joined this thing flawlessly and hit the ground running. That was amazing. Strategic partnerships, kind of like Greg just said, it's the lifeblood of this industry. Just even going back, as he just mentioned, those partnerships with many people, including exchanges. In my past, I formerly working at the exchange. He's been a mentor to me of sorts, and so that's a cool thing. Working with Fidelity, at times I've done that personally. OCC and OIC are everybody's best friend. I've worked with them numerous times, and they've also been great to work with in the industry as well. So that's just kind of how it works. But at Tasty Trade, we're obviously doing many partnerships. Of course, more recently, a partnership or acquisition of sorts, an IG purchased Tasty Trade. And so that's, something we're really excited about, because it's the opportunity to potentially go global and interacting with a whole new user base. And then also too, aside from options, where, people have asked more about cryptocurrencies. And so we have a partnership with Zero Hash. That's something that I think gives consumers more ability to do different things, assuming they're looking at their accounts in the right way. They're being smart about how they manage their financial literacy, right? Like making sure you have emergency fund, making sure you are managing debt off the top of that. So all those things being considered and handled from the beginning. We want to give them the ability to look at something like cryptocurrencies, wherever those may go, right? So strategic partnerships are extremely important.
Great. And that's something, I'm glad you hit on that, sort of the broad spectrum, if you will, of financial literacy, financial capability. You need to have those foundation pieces in place. And I think, at the very beginning of the pandemic, especially, those who didn't have an emergency fund and maybe, found themselves out of work or with less work, the stress that puts on, that you need to have those pieces in place. You need to have, sort of debt under control, if you will. And then, we talk about investing. And I would say, even options trading is a little bit further down that spectrum of investing. But I think the efforts that you all are putting in there to help educate investors is, just wonderful. And I think this is something we could work together with and do more from the SEC's perspective. So this has been a great, experience for me as well, to sort of get to know the work that you're already doing. And I've had some ideas of maybe how we can also look at maybe developing a strategic partnership and working together on a couple of investor education type of initiatives. I think this is this past year especially has given people maybe in some ways more time to reflect on their finances and to get involved with their finances. Maybe some people found that they actually had more free flow of cash, maybe through some of the stimulus payments and things. And they've been, potentially either saving or investing that. But we need to, sort of answer the questions that investors have, but maybe that they aren't asking, and they don't maybe know what to ask. And so how do we help sort of these first-time investors that are challenged in that area? Greg, I think you've talked about this in the past, but what do you think first-time investors or what's going into it, and what do they need to sort of keep in check, if you will?
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, first, I mean, as a firm, we have to continue to evolve. We have to, what are the questions that are being asked? We have to, the one thing we have to ensure is there's a process for investing, and that, that folks have, our customers have a plan, in place, and it's just not buy and hold and hope. That strategy doesn't work very well for most, when it comes to that, but a financial plan. And as Jamal had mentioned, I mean, it's not only trading options, but it is emergency funds. I mean, have you thought about, your holistic, financial situation, whether it's debt or paying off your student loans, or for someone who's past the student loans phase, your house, your car, things like that. So we have to be there for them, not only for one aspect of financial investing, but for their entire portfolio. And I think with the newer folks, and then folks there, I mean, we want to create, lifetime financial partnerships, and that's part of it. I mean, we need to provide the education for the point in their life where they're at. For a lot of investors, as we've seen with volume, that's been talked about, in the industry over this year, it's been options, but it's also been other aspects as well. Especially as you had mentioned, Lori, those who maybe are out of work or don't have as much work, did they plan accordingly? And if those are the questions that they're having now, how can we help them meet those goals? Whether it's through, I mean, we have an app. Everybody has an app, it seems, that helps you manage your financial situation. So, but it's making that type of information accessible, and not only accessible, but do they know about it? And how do you get that in front of them? Make sure that they're aware of what's available to them and how they can utilize it. And, Fidelity, I mean, it's really, I think, a three-pronged approach from our branches to our phone sites, where, a customer, can call or go into the branches, and then our online learning. And so all available there, and just, making sure that they're aware and accessing it.
Have you seen an uptick in investor engagement during this past year? And if so, I mean, I'm just curious, are people, emails too slow? They want to pick up the phone and talk to someone, or I'm just curious sort of what you're seeing at Fidelity.
Yeah, no, I mean, we've seen a tremendous increase in phone volumes and engagement, in customers just asking questions. And so, for us, I mean, we've had to rethink, redesign, and expedite priorities that we have, and new ones that have come up with the volatility and just the changes in how things are going. But we've definitely seen an uptick in investors calling or just engaging online as well. So it has been it has been very evident and obvious that there's some that there's an increase in volume, and how that and how folks, we've did more digitization of processes online that makes it easier for clients to engage with us. So it continues to evolve, and I think it will continue to.
Jamal, what are you seeing in this area?
Yeah, definitely increased engagement, and it's interesting. It's to get kind of back to what Greg mentioned earlier, this idea of when we used to have the rooms, of people on 2 days or so, or those times. I mean, I miss those times because you'd come to a presentation with a topic and you'd cover that topic, but you could sort of gaze across the crowd and see who's, picking things up and who's not, and if you need to shift, and however that may be. Whereas, we get larger audiences now, of course, which is really great, but you don't necessarily have always the engagement, real time, I should say. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. The cool thing is we do have some shows where we have some real time engagement, and you get people asking questions, and, they're fielded right there on the spot. And it's a challenge that I have myself with one of the shows that I'm involved with. On the Tasty Trade Live show, we have a options jive segment that I do every Friday, where basically I'm just bringing something to the table that I'm hoping people haven't either seen or try to grasp. And so, that's part of the challenge, trying to meet people where they're at, sort of like Greg said. So, yeah, but the amount of engagement has been impressive.
And, most of our events have been virtual since we transitioned, say, last March, with the Marine one that I talked about earlier being the first in-person event that we had done in 13 months or so. And the one thing that I do miss with the in-person is reading the room, if you will, because I find that so much more difficult to do online and to have people engage. And then also the conversations that always would take place after an event or people who come up and ask a question that they didn't want to ask in front of their peer group. And it's like, if you have that question, I bet there were 50 other people in the room who had the same question, but trying to draw that out in an online forum can be difficult. So, Denise, creative ways that you're reaching people and sort of what you're seeing?
Sure. It's no surprise, given the work that we do, we have seen drastic increases in the level of engagement and the number of interactions with customers. In March of last year, at the beginning of the pandemic, we started to see those, inquiries build via our calls, chats, and emails. And in April of 2020, we had our record high, almost 3 times the normal volume that we would usually receive. And while that has started to trend down a little, they're still at all-time highs. The average is still higher than even what they were for the past 2 years. So there's definitely an increased engagement. And we're also seeing, we have a lot of first-time investors, of course, but we're seeing that where the questions were initially more basic, now they're starting to become much more advanced, and they're looking at advanced strategies. So we know that people are putting in the time and effort and using the resources that the industry is providing. And as I'm sure has been spoken before, the broker-dealers have done a great job of investing in their own platforms and their own education. And then we as an industry have done a great job collectively. And I think that when we see people putting those educational lessons into practice, that's where we start to see that continued adoption and maybe, additional transactions. So they do their first, they build their knowledge, they build that strong foundation, and then they continue to grow. So I think that's really important. And in the virtual space, it is a little more challenging, but I think it's even more important for us to listen to the feedback that we're getting and to, I'm sure it's been said a few times, meet the customers where they are in their own educational journeys. So trying to build programs and to transition in our digital first approach to what they need in the moment or what they need at the time, what's more topical. So, long before the pandemic, even we started shifting to that digital first mentality and really just trying to reach masses or reach them at mass scale. And also through our strategic partnerships, being able to do that. And taking our content, so a lot of our classes used to be very long, pages and pages of very, important information, but very, very lengthy. So taking the time to chunk those down and put those into digestible lessons that people can read on the go, can take with them, can, do little bits at a time to continue to build that knowledge as well. So really just focusing on trying to make sure that the tools and the services that we provide are responsive, that they're able to, be consumed wherever, especially in this mobile environment, consumed whenever and wherever they want to consume them.
And we've been challenged with that at the SEC as well. Just sort of a question for the group: what is the longest for a short form type intervention, if you will? I've heard 2 minutes is too long, and just curious, sort of what you're shooting for.
Well, definitely on our side, no more than 5. Nope.
Nope, no more than 5. Okay, Jamal.
Yeah, go ahead, Jamal.
I'm not sure I get it. That's what I was going to
say. We're trying to take these complex concepts and break them down into sort of digestible bites, if you will. So instead of going on for a 2-hour-long concept, okay, hey, I want something, I'm looking up, what does this mean? And I have to give a short, sort of how short is
Yeah, I'd say I'm in line with probably like 5 minutes. Yeah.
But the other thing too is that while it might just be 5 minutes, there's always additional information, and we try to at least add in the next step, for the customer, because 2 minutes might be the right time. 5 minutes is starting to push it, but a lot of customers will then click on through to find out some more information, or they'll know where those resources are. So very important for us, to add, even in the in-context education where someone's going through a process of doing research or analysis, we might give a definition of what is a call, or a definition of what is exercise, what is assignment. We're thinking through all these things now, but there's always an additional link, because it's really hard with a definition with a 2 or 5 minute video to explain a concept thoroughly and to get every little intricacy or nuance, out there. So there's always a long form, that we will let the customer go and get to when they have some more time, or when they're ready for that. But the most important thing, I think, Lori, for those 2 to 5 minutes is engaging and at least bringing the subject up. And so then they're starting to understand the concept, and they're not surprised when something happens and they weren't aware of it.
Yeah, I think 2 to 5 minutes is about. Go ahead, Jamal.
No, I think that's right. Just that idea of whether it's 2 to 5, creating the spark that leads to something else eventually. That's all I was going to say.
I completely agree. And 2 to 5 minutes, I think it also depends on the type of media. Videos, absolutely. Even our courses. If it was once a 20-minute course, can we break it down into modules so that then you feel a completion after, say, 5 minutes? Or if it's a webinar, those are a little more challenging, but I think we're even trying to keep those to 45 minutes. But those are more like an online class, a free online class where people are investing the time to try to get that initial information, like Greg said, and then build upon it. And then there's follow-ups through our investor services team where people ask a lot of questions. And that's another place that we've seen a lot of uptick is, the follow-up after the sessions. People are looking for more. They're trying to figure it out. And, again, with the collective resources that we have across the industry, I think that we're, providing a great service for those investors.
Great. So looking ahead, what do you think will evolve from here with, the largest number of participants in market history and record volume, if you will? So how's your crystal ball working? Who wants to start off?
I'll
go.
I'll go.
All right.
Yeah, we'll see, we're all so nice. Greg, you go.
I'll just jump in. I just a couple of thoughts. We're going to continue to evolve. We've seen, this year, in the past, it was in person, then it went to online, then it's this bite-sized information. Jamal, we'd be out of business doing our 3-hour webinars in person if we were doing those today. Nobody would attend, but social media, seems to me it's going to be a bigger part of what's going on in the future, and we're going to have to, figure out how to interact with that. So it's my 2 cents in my opinion, I guess.
Well, you know what? I think you're going to end up with having the last word on this. I just want to thank all of you for joining us. I appreciate your insights here today. Thank you so much. And for the rest of you who are here watching, enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you.
Thank you to Lori and the rest of the panel. We now invite you to click into the Market Outlook 2021 on the agenda page. This session will begin shortly.
You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions@theoptionsinsider.com.